Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to Sir Jeff and our fellow classmates. Today, our group will present about the management of preservation program. Before we go any further, here is the definition of preservation programs and managing preservation programs. Preservation programs are programs or activities that develops and applies preventive strategies to avoid damage to records, while managing preservation programs involve developing policies, assigning preservation responsibilities to staff members, and documenting preservation activities. For our first subtopic, it is about planning policies and budgeting. It is the process where specific needs for the care of the collections are determined, priority established, and resources for implementation are identified. It is to define a course of action that will allow an institution to set its present and future agendas. The principle of preservation programs is not to undertake any treatment that cannot be reversed if necessary, cannot be done properly or according to the instructions, harmful to people, either during the treatment itself or from the residue left on the material treated, change the physical characteristics of the materials treated such as changing color or shapes, and damages of the archival materials in any way. Then, preservation plan should include the preservation objective, current status, immediate priorities for action, who is responsible for what activities, how the plan will be implemented, and how often the plan will be revised and reviewed.
Now, I will continue presenting about preservation budget planning. Budgeting is an essential part of preservation planning. In order to develop a preservation budget, the staff must first identify the funds already being spent on preservation, and then estimate the funds that are needed. This budgeting process can be aided by a budget worksheet. Next, there are few purposes of creating budget worksheet. In the first place, it is aimed to educate planner about the item that should be considered part of institution preservation budget, and this is on regard of whether they are spent on in the right way or not. Not only that, the worksheet can also be used to capture current budget level. For example, having a budget worksheet allows the archive to assess its current financial situation, and they can plan on how to spend it over the course of a period of month or year. Then the institution can assess the fund needed to meet its preservation goal within each category. And the last one is the difference between current budget and the fund needed allow the institution to qualify its financial needs. Next, I will proceed with human resource. In terms of human resource, there will be a staff who is responsible in this activity. For example, a conservator or preservator. In this part, the person in charge will do tasks like conservation and preservation. Activities in conservation such like do examination, preventive care, and treatment. Meanwhile, in preservation, the task is like do monitoring condition of item and maintaining the temperature of humidity.
Next is space and facilities allocation. Space of the storage. In the storage, there are different types of materials is being kept in the different storage. The materials such as paper-based, photograph, and magnetic tape. 70% of storage area are preserved for paper-based storage. We need to make sure that all the aisle has wide space for people and tourists so that they can pass through. All the space in the preservation area need to be clean and the floor need to be dry. All preservation area are being set to ideal temperature and room humidity. Number 1 is facilities allocation in prevent deterioration. There are fumigation room, pest control, air conditioning system, humidifier and dehumidifier, and blinds. Number 2, facilities allocation on restoration activity. There are such as brush, vacuum cleaner, eraser, fumigation room, and lamination machine. Number 3 is facilities allocation on disaster planning. There are floor plan, fire alarm, fire extinguisher, and smoke detector. And lastly is number 4, facilities allocation on material and storage preservation, such as trolley, ladders, steel shelf, non-acidic storage containers, temperature and humidifier meters, and light meters. Next is documentation work and application of computer system in preservation process. Reprography program. Reprographic is a term that encompasses multiple methods of reproducing content such as scanning, photography, and digital printing. The term applies to both physical and digital reproductions of document and image. It is simply produced as the method to preserve the original storage media. The methods are through microfiche, photocopying, digitization, and photo reproduction. Number 1 is microfilming. Microfilming is the photographic process of creating miniature image of records on high-resolution film, which is stored in a small space and read using microfilm and microfiche. Microfilm is a long reel of film like moving picture film. Microfilm can store a large body of information, and user must scroll through entire reels in order to reach documents towards the end. Microfilm is time-consuming in finding the information. Microfiche is a sheet of film onto which images have been copied. It is easier to go directly to a particular document using microfiche. Microfiche does not hold as many images as microfilm. Next is photocopying. Photocopying is where you utilize machines that produce the same size thermoplastic facsimile image by heat and pressure fusing through electrostatic charges onto acid-free permanent paper. Photocopy quality not high unless using expensive machine, more cost-effective to microfilm large series of records. All copies made should be labeled copy in order to distinguish them from originals. Archival quality or acid-free paper should ideally use for preservation photocopies. Copies made for researchers should always be labeled reference copy only, and electrostatic copying does not actually reduce storage requirement. Next is photo reproduction. Photo reproduction is used to produce a security and a duplicating master negative for original or vintage black and white photographic prints. Photo reproduction be used as a preservation tool for copying original photograph. It is important to use professional photographic materials, and copying suit to the types of materials. Photo reproduction costly produces high-quality copies. It is used to create color transparencies of graphic materials and can also be used for documents, posters, and maps. Digitization is a document image processing system that allows for the conversion of materials from paper or other form to machine-readable form, which allows them to be stored and viewed electronically. Next is steps in developing reprography programs. Number 1, conducting a preservation survey. Number 2, transferring and accessioning selected records. Number 3, storing materials properly. Number 4, maintaining environmental conditions. Number 5, providing accurate and detailed means of access. Number 6, handling materials carefully. Number 7, maintaining good housekeeping. Number 8, deciding whether damaged material should be copied in some way or sent to conservation. And lastly, maintaining disaster control plans.
Building. It is important to examine the physical surroundings and the structure of the building and storage locations within it. The archival institutions, record centers, and records offices should all be physically and environmentally secure and stable. The protection of the records begins at the start of their life, and any damage done to the records in registries or office cannot be undone in the archival institution. The neighboring building can cause as much damage to the records and archive as the institutions own the facility. It's also important to find out what events take place in the vicinity at night, the building secure from damage, theft, dangerous goods transport through the area regular. Storage. The storage area must have yield wide enough for people to pass through. The storage room must be used to store archive only. The shelf should not be placed against outside walls and keep away from water pipes. Separate highly acidic materials away from the other archival materials. The archival and storage materials must be kept 15 to 25 cm from the floor. Use archival quality enclosures. Use appropriate size storage material.